Good morning, all. I'm Ted Chandler, and it's my honor and my privilege to serve as co-chair for RVA 757 Connects. This is the last meeting of our board of directors for this calendar year, and I just welcome the board members and those leaders of the Mega Region Institutional Council that have joined us this morning. Really appreciate you prioritizing this. I'm going to start. I think it's appropriate to start with seeing what we've done since the moment of liftoff. Y'all will recall that this whole idea of RVA 757 Connects is really 10 years in the making. Began with Dr. Gene Trani and our very own Jim Ukrop, who came together with this idea for the I-64 Innovation Corridor, where we have the type of collaboration and identification of assets across that. And they recruited Tom Frantz to make it happen. And we began meeting, and in 2020, there was full commitment from both RVA and 757 to do this. So take a look at this, and you will see the accomplishment and the progress that we've made along this line. When we set this up, we started by saying, let's have a 501c3 that will actually facilitate our fundraising, give us governance kind of structure. And we did the smartest thing we could do, which we hired John Martin to be our president and CEO, a futurist with a research background, with a great communicator. And right out of the box, we decided on our mission. That was simple. We're going to elevate the economic opportunity across the geography. And we determined our strategy. We're unabashedly business-led. We are future-focused. So many business-led organizations suffer from having to play small ball because they're focused in one-year increments on what they can get done. We're not afraid to tackle long-term projects. It's one reason we asked for 3 years funding from our sponsors so that we can have that going forward. And we decided that we would only take on big projects, only projects that, when successful, would make a very big difference. Tactically, we are a research advocacy organization. We're not a marketing organization. We have marketing elements. But what we do is thoroughly research and professionally research all of the priorities. And therefore, we're very credible when we go to people and ask for their participation, whether it's permissions, barrier removal, whatever that might be. I won't go through this line because you're going to be, John will be speaking to it. It's just designed to show momentum. But I do want to point out that we have two great strengths. We have the ability to shine a bright light on innovation excellence. And I hope all of you will prioritize our monthly spotlights, innovation spotlights, because when you do that, you will see future projects in the making. When Greg Gilligan runs that program and brings those in, you're seeing things that may very well end up being projects and initiatives going forward. We also have a very big microphone. And one evidence of that is our letters of support. So just a quick word about the ones that are down here. And this just shows what we've been able to get done in this relatively short period of time. On the Pharma Challenge Grant, this was a $53 million federal award to the Alliance for Building Better Medicine in Petersburg. And that has now become a pharmaceutical cluster, with Civica building a huge plant. And it had caused RVA, we're nimble, to flex the definition of RVA geographically to pick up Petersburg. It may come as a surprise to some people, but to the business community in RVA, we thought of Petersburg as a sister city. Well, now we see it as an integrated part of our whole. So that Farmer Challenge Grant was successfully provided, and we provided some of the research and the strong support for that. On offshore wind, I don't know if our board member Bob Blue is on the call, but we came in support of the federal regulatory approvals for the wind farm. That's a great project for RVA 757, headquartered in RVA. All the structures are being built in 757, and of course, that's where the project will be. On the VNG pipeline, desperately need modernization of the natural gas infrastructure, and we provided federal air cover or support, letters of support for that. With Jefferson Lab, a huge success. We did two things. One, we supported Jefferson Lab with Governor Youngkin to get a $42 million award for a building. And then we supported Jefferson Lab with the Department of Energy to get a huge supercomputer to put in it, both of which were successful. And that just came down in September. We're extremely excited about that. There's going to be a huge ripple effect with our geography having one of the fastest computers in the world, and just a perfect additional evidence of our region being a global internet hub. I-64 gap, we've talked about that quite a bit. Governor Northern put $20 million in the budget for that. And when the smoke cleared with our advocacy at the General Assembly, it's fully funded at $750 million. And I believe, beginning next Monday, they're going to be tearing trees down and starting that project. The Springfield-Franconia bypass, that's not in our geography, but we supported a $100 million Federal Railroad Authority award, because that's really the key to our rail project that is in Hampton Roads and moving on up. And then 757 Collaborative, we supported their $1.2 million federal grant, interestingly, to build out their ecosystem capabilities, entrepreneurial ecosystem capabilities. So later in this meeting, we're going to be focused on what do we do next? And we get those ideas from you, our board members. So I want to thank you for that. Next slide. We have welcomed new directors. Next slide. So our class for this year, we previously announced these folks in February. This was our class, and now in September, this is our class. Y'all are really the key. The reason that our advocacy is impactful is because the power of the board that is behind it. What we do with these letters is they're all vetted by all, obviously well-researched, as I said. They're approved by the executive committee, but they carry a lot of weight. And it's because of each of y'all. Next. We lost a giant. We lost, one of the people that in our community comes close to being irreplaceable. Any of you that worked with Debbie know of his commitment to community. He was at Landmark Communications. He was actually an attorney that was recruited by them to be the president and CEO of Landmark Communications. Remember, Landmark Communications launched the Weather Channel. And in 2001, he retired from that to be a full-time community leader. I would commend any of you to do a quick little research on Dubby just to see how pervasive his impact was across education and science, economic development, local government. And he was one of the people that was pushing John and ultimately me to make sure that we got this collaboration up and going, a true giant. So I now, remembrance, I would now like to turn this over to our secret sauce.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to go through a lot of topics and keep the pace going here. We're going to start with some committee updates, and that'll culminate with Greg talking a little bit about our success with communications. And then I'm going to come back and talk about our initiatives, where we stand with each one of the approved initiatives and the immediate next steps. And then have a little fun with kind of a review of what we accomplished this year and some of the highlights of the survey findings, and thank everybody for taking that survey. And then back end, the second hour, we're going to hear from Nancy Gurdon and Wilson Floor. They're going to kick off an update on Go Virginia, something that Debbie actually had a huge hand in creating. And then the second topic is going to be kind of an open forum about where we go from here. Really going to keep the screens up or the slides down and really talk about the future as we put our plan together for next year. We want to have a chapter on what's over the horizon and where we're headed with our organization. And then Tom Franz, our co-chair, will close us out at 12 noon. So thank you again for your time. We try to be as efficient as possible with these meetings and really focus on content. It takes a lot to run a nonprofit, even our small little nonprofit. We have on our homepage at the very bottom, you have to scroll all the way down. There's something called documents. If you click on that, it's our board portal. And we have all of our EC minute notes. We meet once a month. We have all of our budget recaps. We have all of our foundational documents. So anytime you want to catch up on the nitty gritty detail, it's all there, and it's posted in a timely manner, so you can track exactly where we are on a lot of administrative fronts. So we're going to start with committee updates and kick it off with Ross Grogg and Chris Lloyd talking about government relations. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're not going to have slides for these committee reports, but we're going to clip through them and catch you guys up on where we are. So we'll start with you, Ross and Chris.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for your time. Just wanted to cover sort of two quick things. First, for those of you, if you've been under a rock the last week, I think you'll see we had a big election last Tuesday, and Democrats now control both the House and Senate. One seat majorities in both chambers, 51-49 in the House and 21-19 in the Senate. While there were a couple races that got a little tighter as absentee and late early votes were counted, the results from Tuesday evening did not shift. And I think as far as that impacts this group, it means that we now have a speaker designee that's in the mega region. Don Scott has been selected by his colleagues to be the speaker designee. We have a Senate finance chair in Senator Louise Lucas, who's in the mega region. And then we are just learning that while we were hoping for a Senate majority leader from the region, it sounds like the Senate Democrats have selected Scott Surville to be their majority leader. But I think you all may remember from Convergence, I think it was 2 years ago, we did sort of a political power of the region compared to Northern Virginia. And so once we see committee chairs, I think we will do that same analysis again. But given what we know today, I think it's suffice to say that we still have a significant amount of political power in the region, probably more so than when Democrats were last fully in charge of the legislature, and we saw so many Northern Virginia, committee chairs and leadership members. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to talk about the legislative agenda process and next steps there.
Thanks, Ross, and appreciate the chance to be with everybody this morning. I'll start off with first kind of walking through the calendar so that everybody understands the dates of which we'll be operating on under as we approach the 24th session, and then talk a little bit about the legislative agenda and what we've all been working on with regards to that. So the calendar, just remember, we're headed into a long legislative session, which is a 60-day session, which means we go in the second Wednesday of January, which is the 10th. We will then be in session until March 9th. Hopefully we will not go into extended session or a special session after that, but we'll see. Remember, what is under consideration this year is not only legislation, but also it'll be the first budget crafted by Governor Youngkin exclusively and his team. And that will be not only amendments for the residual of the year that we are currently in, which is fiscal year 24, but for the biennial budget beginning July 1, 2024, running through June 30th, 2026. So the governor's in the process now of wrapping that up. Usually they put that to bed over the Thanksgiving holiday or shortly thereafter. And then the governor will be presenting it to a joint meeting of the money committees on December 20th, which is where he lays out his budget for consideration by the legislature. Given the political dynamic that Ross just outlined, obviously it's going to be an interesting budget discussion. I think we're all waiting to see whether the governor is going to come in with kind of a slash and burn kind of concept or more of a conciliatory concept with his budget. That's a issue we're waiting to see. Shaping the budget, as y'all may have heard, the state revenue picture is looking pretty good. We're in fact a little bit ahead of forecast based on the reports that were given yesterday at the Appropriations Committee. Employee withholding remains strong. Corporate income taxes are way above forecast, and sales taxes are still slightly above forecast. On the reverse side, though, the bills are starting to come due from a lot of decisions that have been made in the past. Medicaid spending we're now probably going to need another $1 billion to $1.5 billion of $700 million for Medicaid spending. We've got more money that is needed just to keep up with the formula for K-12 spending. That's $1 billion, $1.5 billion. And what it appears, what the administration is wrestling with, is that a number of the pots of money that the ARPA and other stimulus monies went into, instead of going into one-time costs, went into some that were creating long-term expectations, many of which had merit, childcare and others. But the question is, with the impending reduction or elimination of these federal subsidies, does the state pick that up in some form or fashion? So there's a great deal of pressure on the budget, even the new revenues that are coming in, whether they'll be sufficient. So what the governor's office has been asking all the agencies to do is to come forward with 5 to 10% reduction plans of employees and budget, that in case needed, that they could do that. Fortunately, it looks like we're going to avert a government shutdown, at least in the short term, the one that was supposed to happen this Friday. But of course, we've really just kicked the can down the road until January and February with this bifurcated structure that Congress is looking at. So there's always that concern, whether we could have a shutdown next year that would impact the budget going forward. There's obviously continuing concerns regarding a recession. It does look like we're headed towards a soft landing, but the world economy is not in great shape, particularly China, and what that would do to state resources remains to be seen. So I would say it's a very cautious approach that both the legislature and the governor are coming to the General Assembly session with. With that in mind, working through the executive committee and the leadership, we looked, and using the results of the survey that were done of the board leadership, we put together a list of priorities for this group and have sent them to the governor and his team so that he can have that and be aware of those priorities as he's assembling his budget. Many of those are items we've already talked about earlier in the introduction, the closing the rest of the money on the 64 gap, money for site development and workforce. And so that request went to the governor and identified, here are the priorities of the RVA757 Connects group. Here are the amount of monies that we think are necessary. Here's the agency where we think could be the host of this money or the implementer of these funds, and justify why they're needed, not only why they're needed and the return on investment that is tied to those, which is a very important factor for this governor, but also the stressing the concept that these are one-time appropriations. They're very concerned, and it goes back to the comments I made earlier about continuing obligations, is that these are transformational, kind of one-time kind of things that will help advance the goals of this group and move the Commonwealth forward. So I know that those were delivered. I think, John, y'all had them hand-delivered last week to the Secretary Cummings and others in influence, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Commerce and Trade, Secretary of Labor, and others, Secretary of Administration, that were over a number of these areas. I don't know that we've gotten a formal response yet. Don't take that as anything other than that it's just they're going through budget season right now. So I wouldn't be heartbroken that if we have not received a response. So we're waiting to hear back. Obviously, we'll see what the governor proposes on December 20th. Remember, what also happens is during the legislative session is there's a revenue reforecast, usually about midway through. So when the governor proposes his budget in December, he's using it, that is based upon where we think we're headed in November this year. And when we have a revenue reforecast, if the strength in the economy continues and sales tax revenues and corporate income tax revenues and personal income tax revenues continue to be strong, or stronger than forecast, and particularly given the run up we've had in the stock market in the past couple of weeks, and we're up 5 or 10% just in that alone, and that's a major driver of non-withholding revenues. If that is sustainable, then that will help drive revenue, and that could create another quarter of $1 billion, $500 million, $1 billion that could help to supplement some money during session. So continuing to stay in contact with our legislative leaders regarding the priorities. It's not just a get it to the governor and done, but there would be the opportunity to put pressure on the legislators during session that in case additional resources came available, that they could be directed towards those efforts. So that's where we are. John, I didn't know if you wanted to supplement that, but
well, I do want to supplement it with a big thank you. I mean, you and Ross are amazing. I feel like I'm your #1 client, and I know I'm at the very bottom of the list with no payment going to you. You are just killing yourselves for us, and I can't thank you two enough. Call me back immediately, and then the thoughtfulness of putting together the plan that we sent to the administration just is top notch. So thank you guys. But I do want to open it up to the group. It's we've got these two rock stars that are heading up our government relations. Any questions for them? Even beyond RVA757 Connects, it's a very interesting time in Virginia. Peggy.
Of course. Ross, thank you. And Chris, thank you for the update. I heard you mention that you've put workforce development in the letter. Can you be a little more specific about that?
I think you're sure, Peggy. I appreciate that question. We kept it somewhat general, in that we wanted to talk about increased funding for credentials and certifications and those things. I think the way we characterize it, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have the document in front of me, I'm sorry, was that we wanted to see increased business-driven business collaboration with regards to driving how workforce development spending is done in the Commonwealth, which would obviously be very much aligned with the vision that the new chancellor at the community college system, I think, holds dear to his heart. He certainly demonstrated it when he was in Arizona that was something that was important to him. And so we weren't specific as regards to specific programs, because I think we're trying to figure out exactly what the nomenclature is going to be for how that, Go Virginia's got a Talent Pathways initiative, what the community college system does. A lot of the higher education institutions are looking at increased support for internships. So we thought that general rubric of a business-driven, business-focused collaboration around driving curriculum to meet the needs of our future workforce was the best way to handle that, so that as specific initiatives came forward, we could say, yes, that's aligned with what we're doing, which I think many of them will be. And we can endorse specific programs as we get the contours and parameters. We understand better exactly what's going to be proposed. You understand what I'm saying there? Ross, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's exactly right.
Well, I just want to make sure from your business driven perspective, certainly, fast forward, which is pretty much 100% business driven, is going to run out of money again before the end of the fiscal year. And that's going to affect talent development, talent availability. In addition to the fact that the community college, we do have a huge ask out there. We are the most underfunded higher education, not only in the state, but almost across the nation. And so to be able to do the business driven, provide that service and provide that talent, we would really love to have RVA 757's support for our 6-year plan. So $622 million is in the budget, is what we've asked.
And I think,
yeah,
John,
Peggy, I don't know if you heard, but during the House Appropriations retreat yesterday, it almost became comical how many times they referred to that ask being sort of the largest ask of any state agency. And when they talked about sort of budget drivers, they would say, oh, it was, it's $2 billion, but 600 of that is the community colleges.
Well, the question was asked, that similar sort of question was asked during the chancellor's presentation, and it was posed in this way. You're asking for 40% of the education budget, and Dr. DeRay's comment, correctly so, is we educate 46% of the Commonwealth, and so really, what's the problem there?
Right, that's great.
And
Yeah,
John,
can I-
correct me if
thanks.
I'm wrong. I think one of the things you wanted to accomplish with this meeting and our future discussions in December was to get this sort of specific feedback on specific
Right.
programs that fit within the general language that we have, so that, you know, again, we can hone our message and more focus it on specific programs as we learn about them and get feedback from the
That's
group,
right.
correct?
That's right. And you
Well-
and Ross and I are going to talk to the chambers and talk to the PDCs and to make sure we understand everybody's legislative agenda so we can be most helpful and complementary. The document that you referenced, Chris, was really our attempt, and we kind of stayed in our lane and put most of our emphasis on the global internet hub and to make sure that any remnant money needed for I-64 GAP was there. So we didn't really go too far afield, thinking that other people were probably doing the same thing we were doing. But we just said, why not put a compelling document together for the governor's team to say, hey, if you're planning your budget, think about some of these things. It might not be top of mind. And we'd be happy to post that in the portal and share it with you. But it's just something that the executive committee thought it was smart to do that. And so we did. So, all right, we got a lot of ground to cover. I want to move on and thank you once again, Chris and Ross, for all of your help. It's just amazing. We couldn't be where we are without you guys. So let's turn it over to development. Mitch Hayden, we can give us an update.
Thanks, John. So what's the headline? The headline is that we are in really strong financial shape moving into the new year. And, you know, when you think about the, you know, how long we've been an organization and what has to happen to grow and mature, funding is critical. And so how do we get there? The pledges, if you remember, the pledges were invoiced in the first and second quarters of this year. 85% of those pledges are in. A lot of the others have been promised for payment in November and December. So, you know, from a standpoint of people stepping up, with the pledges and then coming through on the pledges with a check has been critical. On top of that, we're working on, there's going to be another tranche of renewals coming out. They'll be invoiced towards the end of first quarter, maybe into the beginning of the second quarter of next year. In addition, the work of Sarah Jane and Moses and others to bring in a really strong class, that class that Ted referenced at the beginning of his comments, really powerful. This new group that's come in because they further helped us from a financial standpoint. Other things going on, hopefully everyone saw the thank you letters that we worked on earlier this year. That campaign was completed. And I think it was successful, not from a standpoint that we got it done, but from a standpoint of just getting a message out about how important membership is in this organization and the contributions that everyone has made from that perspective. In addition, the overview, we talked about creating an overview brochure. It was created, it was printed, it's now being distributed at meetings and being mailed. That is a great piece. It really tells our story in a clear, tangible way, and so it's exciting that is now getting out there. So, John, I think that covers the main things that I had to share. Anything else I missed?
No, that's great, and I tell you, we've really matured as a group because it's now we're into the fourth quarter, and we're not having to kill ourselves to collect all the pledges that was done first quarter. So you guys have brought an enormous amount of organization to our effort. Yeah. But thank you.
I got a big shout out to Greg and Laura, because a lot of that behind the scenes work of getting invoices out and some follow up has been pretty important.
Great.
So
any questions for Mitch? Okay, we try to end the year with at least 125,000 surplus as just a good practice. You know, it gives us three or 4 months running room, and so that's we're on target to easily do that. Moving into next year. But again, we've got detailed documents on their portal. All right, so let's move on to nominations and governance. Moses, I think you're going to take the lead on this. I'm not sure if Sarah Jane's here.
Yeah, I don't think Sarah Jane could make it today unless she's on, and I don't see her. But I will start, and Sarah, if you're here, pipe in. But Sarah is definitely has just been tremendous in the role of serving as the co-chair of this group. So. With the Governance and Nominations Committee. So I'll start by saying we actually changed the name this year. We were the nominations committee. Now we've added governance to that committee, and it's a lot like my day job. Same pay, same staff, double the work. But so thank you for that. In terms of bringing new talent into the organization through the nomination process, as you saw earlier, I think we've done a great job of bringing in some great directors. Right, we still have a few remaining board seats. So we're hoping to fill those in the coming year. And I think, we're going to continue to have that focus on the diversity vector as well, because we want to bring in even more diversity into the leadership of this organization. Some of the things that we've done this year, in addition to that, on the governance side, so we created an employee handbook, which is a best practice, kind of in concert with continuing on the best practices front. Next year, we're going to be creating an operating handbook, which will have kind of our standard operating procedures, things like writing checks, filing taxes, getting directors insurance, and all those good things that a well-managed organization actually does. We will be putting into that handbook. We're also going to look at the EC composition in 2024. There are a lot of directors who have been directors since or I should say executive committee members who've been executive committee members since the organization's inception, right? Which is 4 years or more now. So there are 14 of us now. And we're going to explore that topic, in 2024 as well. Make sure we have the right composition of this part of the organization. It's really, really kind of the steering wheel, if you will, of how we operate. On an engagement front, we feel board engagement is actually going really, really well. We did a little research in the year to just ask the question around, do we need to do more to get board members engaged? And I think the answer was pretty much no. I think people feel engaged. They feel good about the cadence of communications. I think we, through Greg and John and the rest of the EC's help, have just done a great job this year with building that communications platform. I think people feel engaged, and then I think they feel like the mission is clear and they're aligned with that mission. So everybody seems pretty happy with that. I think that is pretty much my report, John. So I can leave it open to any questions or any additions that you might have.
Yeah, since you're doing double the work now, if anybody wants more engagement, they can call you. Any questions for Moses? And well, Moses, you make us feel like a real foundation. I mean, you're buttoned up with Sarah Jane, and we're following best practices, and it's good that we can get to this point in our maturity and kind of take a deep breath and really, really make sure we've got, really do have a best practice in every front. So thank you for your leadership. Okay. All right. We're going to go back to sharing screen, and Greg is going to share a little bit on what's happening with communications. So, Greg, take it away.
Thanks, John. Let me just talk a little bit about our communication initiatives and our successes this year. In February, we relaunched our website, and the website focuses on, right up top, on our 4 key initiatives. So you can see right there. John, next slide. And one thing about this new website update is that we're easily able to update the site as well. So for instance, while the Convergence 2023 program was going on back in September, just after the Global Internet Hub plan was announced, the site was uploaded and updated with the map and photos from that thing, really basically within an hour. And then I also sent out a LinkedIn post on that, which got some traction as well. Then nearly all of our PowerPoint presentations from the various speakers during Convergence were loaded onto the site earlier that morning, so participants and others could review them throughout the day and afterwards. So this all means that more people are going to our site, and we had a couple of gangbuster days on our website back in October. The first one happened in early October. The spike in traffic was a result of an email blast that we had sent out on Tuesday afternoon, the day before our Innovation Spotlight webinar. And it was letting people know that they needed to sign up for the webinar, but also to let them know about the Global Internet Hub and our strategic plan. From that email blast, 59.1% of our recipients from our database, or about 1,900 people, opened that email. We had more than 2,000 people visiting our website on that particular day. By using MailChimp, which is the program that we use to send out our emails blasts, we can track our performance. And so we typically get an open rate in the neighborhood of like 30% to 35%, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. But so getting a 59.1% open rate is pretty phenomenal. And by opening that email, we looking at MailChimp, we could see where people are going. So 3,500 total clicks, or about 49% of all the clicks that were made from that particular email, they went to the convergence site as a part of our website. 2,400 clicks, or roughly about 34% of all the clicks, were made going to this map, as you see here. And then another 17%, or about 1,200 clicks were made to the strategic plan. So people are interested in what we're doing, and those are really pretty strong numbers. Then we had another one a couple of weeks later where we had a phenomenal number of people when we were promoting the Jefferson Lab Innovation Spotlight, where we had a 62.8% open rate. So people are going to our website. Next slide, John. One of the things that we've done this year is really kind of taken the virtual innovation spotlight webinar series kind of to the next level. And we've had some successes this year. We've heard from innovations taking place at Civica down in Petersburg, to offshore wind, to the life-changing innovations taking place at LifeNet Health in Virginia Beach, to learning about the DEEC Internet Exchange, and learning and hearing from the German technology-based German-based technology company's CEO, who came in. He zoomed in with us all the way from Germany. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we were able to hear about Jefferson Lab being at the forefront of innovation with the new data center computing center. So thanks to Stuart for doing that. Next slide, John. So all of our webinars from this year and last year are all available on our website. You can go back and look at any of them. You can see them here on our homepage, where you can click on them. Next slide, John. And we also record all of our webinars too, and they're also available on our website. And that by doing so, we're seeing an increasing number of people who are watching the video recordings in addition to actually being participants during the webinar. We used to get maybe 10 or 20 people watching these videos maybe last year. Now we're seeing a lot more. We're seeing dozens of people watching them. So here are some of our top video recordings so far this year. In February, when we had the one about Civica, we so far have had 143 views of that particular video. The Jefferson Lab one from 2 weeks ago had 107 views and growing. And the one that we had about the entrepreneurial community back in January had 78 views. John, next slide. I just want to make sure that you all are aware that our next webinar on Wednesday, December 6th at noon is going to be about Rocket Lab, and how Rocket Lab is taking off on Virginia's Eastern Shore and boosting the visibility of one of the lesser-known spaceports in the U.S. Since January, Rocket Lab, which is a California-based aerospace company, Rocket Lab has launched 3 successful missions from the Launch Complex number 2 at Virginia's Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport there on Wallops Island. So those are something to put on your calendar. The information about that will be coming out here in the next couple of days. That's it, John. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, thank you for all you do, and you have been a huge addition to our cause. So any questions for Greg? Any suggestions? I think the research scores showed just how much people feel like they're in the know on what we're doing, and it's all because of Greg. Greg, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so the update on our initiatives, the I-64 GAP project. Well, here's the update, mission accomplished. There was a great groundbreaking on Monday, and just a real love fest where everybody involved, and boy, we felt appreciated. And I tell you, one way to understand this is just to be in that sort of environment and hear people talking about it and thanking us. The Global Internet Hub, we've gotten the strategic plan done. There are 10 core strategies that came out of our 8 months, and 64 people working on this, and the 2 consultants. And so what we're doing now is having monthly meetings with a core group of members who are now a new RVA757 committee. And so this group, the Global Internet Hub, called the Council, Global Internet Hub Council, will start to attend, we'll have a representative to attend our board meetings and give a report, but we put together a spreadsheet, as you can see this image of every one of our 10 strategies, who's leading it, what organization, what's the next step. And we've also gone out and raised some money to help fund this work. And already with the Community Foundation of Hampton Roads at 50,000, and many of these folks listed, we're over 100,000. This is in addition to our ongoing operating budget that you guys support on this call. So we're off and running, and we'll update you as we go. And this is a long-term strategy, but every time we present this, and I had an opportunity this week, earlier this week, for the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, 150 people in a room. Everybody just loves getting the map and hearing about this topic. And now we got some real energy behind next steps and what we're doing. Passenger rail. This is a long-term approach. You know, we're focused on Northern Virginia to get that long bridge built. That's the key, or the gateway to getting more rail in the lower half of Virginia. And the second key is to make sure that we get our fair share of the available dollars on improvements. So with our leadership, what we've done is gotten the PDCs in our mega region, the Plan RVA, the Richmond PDC, the Crater District Planning District, which is Petersburg, and then obviously Hampton Roads with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and HRTPO. And so together, we've met, and with actually Jim Spoor is on the call with his leadership. We put together all the questions that we had that we really want to watch, in particular that we want the state, Jennifer DeBrule and DRPT, as well as the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority with JD Stadler, to really hear us as we're putting together the 5-year plan. So they've given us a seat at the table, and we're being very respectful and appreciative of that. And we've already had 2 meetings with them, so we're going to continue down that path to make sure we show up with available funds to do spot improvements where we can while we're waiting for that long bridge to get built. The creation and extension of the bike walk trails, you know, the Fall Line Trail, which runs from Ashland to Petersburg, is, you know, it's really, it has an advocate. It's got the support of so many people. They've been able to raise a lot of money. They only have 48 million left. They had a big groundbreaking in October we attended, but they're going to have another one in Hanover in the winter. And it's amazing the traction that it's gotten. And we need to get the Capitol Trail extension. It's called the Boat Trail now, but I understand from Bob Crum that we might be in a position to think about renaming that and going back to the Virginia Capitol Trail. But we really have to get some more traction here. It's more money because it's 2 separate trails, one on the south side and then one through the peninsula. But this would be game changing for us. And the issue is, when you look around the country at what these longer distance trails mean in terms of economic development and quality of life, it's a no-brainer. But we're not getting traction with the administration. And, you know, and I'm talking the very highest levels, they're not seeing these long distance trails as something that they really should be part of. The challenge is the misperceptions. And listen, I'm going to be really clear. I'm not knocking urban trails. We all see them. The problem is, not a lot of people are on them all the time. So when you look at it, you're like, well, golly, you're taking a lane away from me as a car driver. And so the success of marking the pavements might be, interestingly, at odds with enthusiasm when you hear the word trails. So we've got to make a case for these longer distance trails as an economic development engine, a recruitment and retention factor for younger generations, and really a leveler for all different types of people to share something in common. So we need to package a strong advocacy effort and really get some of you guys to really step up and help be the leader of this. We have started working with Sportsbacker in Richmond that's done a really good job on that Fall Line Trail. And we're writing a paper now, which is the formula that we used on I-64 Gap. If you all remember 3 years ago, we started off with a white paper and just started building on it, improving it and pitching it to everybody. And it worked. And so we're going to do that same path. So we're in the middle of crafting this. And again, there's a coalition that we've helped create that will get behind this with the new General Assembly, with this really, hopefully, very compelling economic development story and case studies from around the country. So any questions on our current initiatives? Okay. All right, so going to have a little fun here about our performance this year and just sort of looking back, the 7 best hits of 2023. Growing partnerships. And I tell you, we actually, Tom Franz always says it's about convening and collaborating, connecting, and it really starts at the top. And so this year is number 7, we're going to say creating a greater, deeper relationship with Jason. He came to executive committee meetings. He came to Convergence. He's just been a great partner, and we feel so much closer to what the state's doing. He returns calls immediately. And so that was something we really invested in this year. And he's going to be coming to at least 1 board meeting a year and 1 executive committee a year. And we really are tying closer together our programming. Another partner is Virginians for High-Speed Rail. And you guys know Danny Plummer, and he's been helping us on our rail committee of RVA757 Connects. But he put together a statewide, very thorough, comprehensive report that's now going to be mailed to all elected officials, starting with the General Assembly. And he came to us and said, "We want you to be part of this." And we're like, "Well, we didn't help you really craft it. It's well written. It's really pointed on all the things that we want to say." And he goes, "Yeah, but you guys are who you are." And so in this document, there's a page with everybody that's across the front of it. But I think it's just another sign that we really have, kind of arrived, that people want to partner with us. So that's good to be wanted, and we're really thankful for that, and we're really careful about what we put our name on. Number 6, Convergence, record crowd and sponsors. We have just seen this grow and grow and grow. We're just pinching ourselves at the success of this, 170. I think this thing can get a lot more growth left. This has really become an institution now, and we get a lot of media coverage with it. And all the credit goes to these 2 folks, Brian Stephen, Brian Anderson, and their great staffs really putting together. It takes us a year to plan it and pull it off, but just thank you guys for a first-class, world-class job in making this happen. So kudos. Number 5 is our communications, and I just want to thank Greg again. Our database is 3,500, but what's really cool is the organic growth that's happening now, that more and more people are hearing about us and signing on, and it's the right people signing on. It's senior management, senior level people. So again, Greg, I can't say enough great things about what you've brought to this organization. So thank you for that. Number 4 is the Franconia Springfield Rail Bypass Project. This is $100 million in funding, and it's really cool. It's an elevated track to get over the bottle jam with CSX track. So it's just one more bottle jam that's going to be taken care of. The last one is the Long Bridge. But DJ Stadler is the executive director of Virginia Passenger Rail and an incredible leader, and he's spoken to us at Convergence. And again, we meet with him with Jennifer DeBrule on the statewide plan. But he really, at the Convergence, really thanked us. And I'm just going to play this clip because it really...
We are proud to announce that earlier this week, the federal government awarded us a $100 million grant to fund the Franconia Springfield Bypass, part of it. That project is about 160, maybe 170 miles from the Hampton Roads area. One of the biggest letters of support we got was from RVA757. The folks here said, "Look, we know that this is nowhere near our neighborhood, but relieving congestion on the bypass will make a big difference in how we reliably get transportation down here." So thank you all for your support on that. Goes a long way. We asked for $100 million. We got $100 million in a very competitive grant program. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Yep. Jefferson Lab, we obviously there were some major players in this, the Friends of Jefferson Lab and Stuart and his crew. We just had a very tiny part, but we were there to support when asked. And I think our support in writing a letter and saying it's not only the people in Hampton Roads, but the CEOs in Richmond want this too. And boy, was it a great announcement.
This is the single biggest technology investment in Hampton Roads ever. What we're seeing today is the future brought right here into the present. The future not just being accelerated, but being realized. Very few national labs across our country that had the kind of single purpose that Jefferson Labs had up until this morning. Now, with this high performance data facility, we have a dual purpose national lab, and the long-term prosperity existence and success of Jefferson Lab for literally decades to come.
The HPDF will be the world's leading purpose-built facility for data-intensive scientific research, a new tool that will allow researchers to access, to analyze, and utilize the vast trove of cutting-edge research data.
But listen to this: development of new materials for energy applications, fundamental physics, genomics, pandemic modeling, environmental modeling, pharmaceutical development, energy efficiency, advanced manufacturing, and specific emerging needs of industry. I see so many of our friends from our colleges and universities. This kind of academic collaboration is also going to be a home run and a great, great winner.
We are opening the next generation for the world of science, for the Commonwealth of Virginia, for the people of Newport News and this region, that generations beyond us will be studying, learning, and working for this facility.
To give you an idea of the economic impact, a recent study showed that each dollar invested in high-performance computing returns $507. I think any of us would like that kind of return on investment.
An announcement like this only happens because the DOE looks at Jefferson Labs and says, this is a place of talent. So it's a validation.
It's not just an exciting announcement, it is a monumental leap. And it's one that we are all doing together.
So special shout out to Nancy Gergen and Jim Spoor and Bob Crum, a lot of the leaders in Hampton Roads that are part of our group. You guys just doubled down and said, we're going to win this, and you did. And it's great
John,
to be part. Yep.
This is Tom. Let me just interject and say that the night before the announcement, I got a email from the head of Senator Warner's staff saying you all need to show up tomorrow because you're going to get a major piece of furniture for the mega region. So they know about us, and at W. Wynn's funeral, I got a hug by Senator Warner thanking us for all we've done to accelerate these regions.
Yep. Great comments, and it is a team effort, and this one in particular, but boy, is it going to pay dividends long term. And then the Global Internet Hub, we did the plan, and thank everybody, and we really captured it in this map, and got a grant from Meta to do this map, which was fantastic, and Greg had his fingerprints all over this. And the number one, I think, when we look back over this year, is the GAP getting fully funded, and then the groundbreaking that was just held. Really phenomenal, and all the high fives that were going on that day. Really, really felt great to be part of this effort and to see something that's going to be around for generations to come, to have this 3 lanes all the way connecting our region. And this is what Stephen Birch said at our Convergence conference.
So the overall value of the project is $750 million, and I would be remiss if I did not say thank you to everyone in this room to be able to help support the initiatives of the General Assembly to allocate $450 million of general fund money to this particular project. Yes.
Yep. All right. So it's been a great year. I got a lot done, and we sent you a copy of the survey results. Thank you, everybody, for taking that. It was 68% response rate, which just crushed it compared to last year. But this is so important for us when we go out and write those letters and talk to people. And we said the board fully supports this. So we feel like we can confidently say that. Really got an amazing top 2 box score just overall. And then across all the different ways of our operation, really high scores, top 2 box scores. And then in terms of the current board approved signature priorities, board and Mike approved, and these have been discussions in the past, but this has kind of been our roadmap. And you can see those high scores, the top half of the list. It's just interesting. Passenger rail and bike walk trails, not quite as enthusiastically supported. Top 2 box, nobody was really against it, but strong support for those, certainly those top 5. And then in terms of topics, you can see the topics listed. This goes beyond those signature items from the previous slide, but underneath a lot of those initiatives are supporting the workforce and showcasing innovation and site readiness, and again, high top 2 box scores. there. So, you know, the great news here is that there is an amazing amount of consensus and consistency in what we're doing and the charge that you've given us and the guardrails that you put up. And so we're just riding right down the center of the road with a lot of your support. Interesting, though, when you read through the verbatims, a couple things come out. And one is this theme, marketing the mega region is needed. So just read some of these verbatim quotes. I say it's interesting because we don't have the budget to market the mega region, nor is it really part of our charge. We let the marketing of our jurisdictions, of our separate regions, up to the, you know, the Alliance and the Greater Richmond Partnership. And while maybe there's a case to be made to marketing the mega region, it would require millions of dollars. And so we're not seeing other mega regions do that. We're more of a policy group and more of a support group, like many of the examples I just shared with you. But it's interesting that this perception's out there that this is a need that we should do, that we should attack. So maybe in the discussion, we can bring this up. Another thing that was a clear theme throughout the verbatims is don't take on too much. And all these quotes kind of support that, is like, you know, we're doing a good job with what we have. Let's concentrate and be successful and not get too thin. I think Sun Tzu said, if you send your reinforcements everywhere you'll be weak. We asked for big ideas, and we're going to get to those in a few minutes when we have our open discussion, but you guys gave a lot of cool ideas. In terms of engagement, Moses referenced this, 90% top two box said, I'm satisfied. I got the engagement I want. And then we tested some of those ideas. The only one that really, I think, came out to something we should look into is maybe an in-person meet and greet. Got some traction, but by and large, people said they were satisfied with engagement. And clearly, this is the right time when it comes to our spotlight and innovation once a month, 12 to 1, and then our board meetings. This is the right time for them, 10 to 12. And then convergence, we got a blow off dinner. Everybody's saying have the event, and then that's it. And so we kind of were at that because we see a fall off in attendance. So next year we're just going to make it a day long and end right at the end of the day. So thank you for that input. In terms of any open issues on that topic, please weigh in now. I think it's been a great year because of all of your support and because we were focused. And I think all the scores suggest that, and our outcomes suggest that. Any comments? Okay. Well, that brings us to the one of two topics we're going to spend the last hour on. The first one, we're going to hear from Nancy Erden and Wilson Floor. Tell us about Go Virginia. And, you know, they have been a big part of our success in funding 2 of our plans. But we're going to turn it over to you guys to walk us through where Go Virginia is now and what the future looks like. So,
Great. Well, thank you, John. And Wilson and I will take it from here. What we thought we would do is I'm going to do a very brief overview of Go Virginia at the Commonwealth level. Then I'll speak a little bit about Region 5 and then turn it over to Wilson for Region 4. And then we also have teed up, each of us collectively, some ideas about working together as we move ahead. So maybe just to back up, what is Go Virginia? Let's sort of look big picture at the Commonwealth. This is an amazing program, was actually started by the business community in 2015. And I absolutely have to give a shout out and commendation to W. Wynn. He clearly was one of the business leaders at that time to push for this. And the whole point was to really do a couple things. One was to have a bigger role for the business community and economic development. The other was to foster more collaboration among all the units of government. And the third was to really make sure that we were incenting, as a Commonwealth, activities that were really going to drive job creation and innovation. And so this program now has been around since that time very successfully. A couple of key points. The Commonwealth is divided into 9 regions. Of course, Hampton Roads, as you can see, big picture all the way to the Eastern Shore, and then Isle of Wight and everything in between is Region 5. And then Wilson will talk a little bit about Region 4. Incidentally, the structure is starting to have some merit as well in other parts of the Commonwealth. So the chancellor for the community college system recently discussed how he wants to have the community colleges within the Go Virginia regions collaborate. So in our case, in Region 5, we have 4 amazing ones that are obviously doing some alignment. So anyway, this is the overall structure. On the next slide, you'll see just a quick picture of how much money to date. This is just a state dollar, so fairly sizable here across the Commonwealth. And the 4 areas that Go Virginia really focuses on, first of all, it's all around building industry clusters, but within that, it focuses on workforce development, startup ecosystems, cluster scale up, so growing industries, and then site development. And this is really the really early stuff. So this is not competing in any way, shape, or form with the mega site work that the EDP, but really preparing smaller sites. And so you can get a rough idea. Workforce, of course, has been a priority for a lot of reasons. And workforce typically means we're building pathways and connections, not necessarily just funding individual programming. So that's kind of the big picture here at the Commonwealth level. Currently, it'll be up, of course, for renewal in the General Assembly. Historically, we have we as an organization really have not advocated for its support. And I think this is something perhaps we do need to add to the agenda, is that this has been a really incredible resource in the Commonwealth, but specifically in regions 4 and 5. So turning to region 5 for a moment, the thing I want to point out with this slide is in our region, we don't just take Go Virginia as, okay, well, it's another thing we're supposed to do and figure out how to coordinate it. We've actually intentionally aligned, which I want to point out, a number of our organizations that relate to economic development. And so my organization, the Executive Roundtable, really plays a primary role in terms of the thought leadership, the strategy, identifying problems and issues that need to be solved, incorporating innovation, and of course, being the support organization for Go Virginia Region 5. We have a separate council, which is, we are fortunate to have Tom Franz as our council chair, and Lynn Taylor, who's president of Zeltec, is our vice chair. And so we have really an amazing leadership group from the business community, and we've added on the roundtable some higher ed and also growth companies. And then I want to point out on the left, we have something called the Regional Organizations President's Council. It's sort of our contribution to the mic. And it's really coordinated by our 2 chairs of the chambers. So Bob McKenna for Virginia Peninsula and Brian Stevens from the Hampton Roads Chamber. And it includes all of our big regional groups, Alliance, Workforce, Hampton. I won't go through the list, but the point remains, we have really tried to align this and make sure that as we come up with legislative agendas, problems to solve in the region, and obviously alignment with RVA757, that we're thinking about that. And so all of that is instrumental in why we and how we use our Go Virginia money. So on the next slide, just to roll quickly, all of us in Go Virginia have to do an update this year on our growth and diversification plans. This is an every 2-year requirement. And so for Region 5, we did not have a lot of changes from 2 years ago, which probably does not surprise you. And it probably does not surprise you to see these are some of the priority clusters that clearly revolve around water. So we've broken out port operations and logistics, advanced manufacturing, cyber and data analytics, continuation on shipbuilding, ship repair, particularly as it talks about the current state as well as innovation, a range of water technologies, uncrewed systems and unmanned systems and aerospace. And then last year we added life science, although compared to Region 4, we really are younger at life science, but certainly we have a full-blown series of industry clusters here with some of the industries mentioned above that connect to water. On the next slide, you'll see sort of how our dollars look in Region 5. And so this is a cumulative total. We've had an investment of about $54 million, which includes the match funds as well as the Go Virginia funds. And again, no real surprise, the bulk of our dollars have gone into talent development because that has been a real gap here in the region in terms of making sure that we were able to support the industry development. And then just a couple of quick examples of some of the projects that have been most influential. This one we're particularly excited. I have to give a shout out to the Hampton Roads Workforce Council and Sean Avery. They have been a recipient of several Go Virginia Talent Pathway grants, Navy grants, and they were able to successfully scale this very recently to win $11 million from EDA for the Good Jobs Challenge. And this is all around maritime. So once again, we're trying to make sure that we really put a full court press on that first cluster for us. And this is just a great example of how Go Virginia money has been leveraged to achieve this. And obviously there's a lot more that the Workforce Council is doing. On the next slide, you will see a very recent announcement last week. 757 CoLab is our main door, if you will, for the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Region 5. Again, recipient of a Go Virginia grant over time. And they were recently able to win an EDA Built to Scale award by partnering with a couple of other organizations, Black Brand, SBDC, and Innovate Hampton Roads, several of which have also received Go Virginia. So again, good idea of leverage. A big area that we often overlook with Go Virginia is a source of planning grants, things that need to be looked at. And this is no small issue because, you know, John and Wilson and I, we'd all be running around knocking on doors looking for planning money. But you know what? Because we're looking for activities that are going to grow our clusters, we can often make a case to Go Virginia. And so this is one very great example. I want to call out the Hampton Roads Alliance, which led a group to look at the long-term energy roadmap for our region, because it does impact all of our clusters, thinking about it as a portfolio of current and new. So that's an example. On the next slide, you will see another really exciting one around green hydrogen. Actually, this has moved into implementation for how green hydrogen can be a source of energy. And again, call out to Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center, led that with a number of partners. And then on the next one, you'll see another quick example. This is something that we built a number of Go Virginia planning grants around uncrewed systems that we had given to Visa, some workforce planning grants, and we put together a coalition of 100 groups and applied for an EDA grant in uncrewed system excellence. And you can see the region. So while we didn't get it, we are moving ahead and we'll be actually going back to Go Virginia to actually build out a cluster. So you can see the story here. It's a build story. And Go Virginia money is like investment capital. Tom Franz often calls it our angel investment dollars. And that's truly, truly what it is. So just to close and then to switch over to Wilson, on the next slide, these are some of the areas that we see working together with Region 4. We've done some work already in life sciences that Wilson will talk about. The I-64, that really is Global Internet Hub. That in particular is one that we see. John mentioned Jefferson Lab, and then clearly we want to start aligning our industry scale-up work between the two regions. So with that, I'm just going to flip it over to Wilson, who's got a lot to talk about in Region 4.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Nancy. Nice to see everybody, and thanks for the opportunity for us to talk about Go Virginia and our region. When we look at our region, we have two fairly distinctive areas. Obviously, the Richmond area has a little more wealth. And when we look at grants for Go Virginia, we look at high-paying jobs. So the average high-paying job in the Richmond region, and it's called, is $55,000. If we look at the crater planning area of Petersburg and South, with many jurisdictions that are economically distressed, it's about $45,000 down there. So very distinctive, different. And I might say that it was, when we look at Petersburg and South, that was impacted 20, 30, 40 years ago because of the reduction in the tobacco trade back then. Going forward, next slide talks about our industry clusters, which not unlike Nancy, have not changed really since the beginning in our first plan in 2017. However, we've added a potential emerging cluster, which is controlled environmental agriculture. And this is really growing products inside, and we see more of it, and it's a great use of space as well as really clean environmental agriculture. Go ahead, next slide, please. Here's our breakdown of we've spent about, invested in our grants about $11 million. So we have a way to catch up with Nancy's 19 or $20 million of grants. We're always a little competitive, but not too competitive. But again, not unlike Region 5, workforce development in throughout the whole Commonwealth has been a real focus and a lot of our initial projects. Let's move on to the next one. Let me speak a little bit about our projects like our pharmaceutical manufacturing scale up. And Ted described it very, very well this morning. But I might say that I think many of us are aware that most of our generic drugs, 80 and actually maybe 90% of them, come from China. And essentially that's getting the main ingredients for generic medicines for the United States. And besides that, one of the issues, there's very little oversight by the FDA. A great book, if you want to read something about China, China RX, which focuses attention on that issue. So a group got together from Petersburg and Richmond and created with VCU from the first grant of the Gates Foundation. It was called Medicines for All, which was a focus on medications not only in America but also in Africa. And the Gates Foundation really helped create that idea. Following that, the group from Petersburg leaders, as well as Richmond leaders, created Alliance for Better Medicines. And with that, received $52,900,000 for a Build Back Better grant. Very significant. Civic RX, and actually Civic RX, the team was at SIR the other night. We have Flow and Ampac Fine Chemicals all in the Petersburg area. And some of this money has been already dedicated to workforce development and it's proceeding around very nicely, but it's really given us a focus on this cluster and really to get to be well known for onshoring generic drugs. Let's move on to the next one, please. This is a workforce development program called FAME. We think it's marvelous and a great illustration of the combination of having a college and our manufacturing companies working together. So you have students that have graduated from high school, spend 3 days a week in a paid internship. And I might say in year one, we even heard that one of the interns received stock options from the company he was working with. And then they spend 2 days at Richard Bland studying. And after 2 years, they're eligible to work full-time with these companies. Let's move on to the next one is really site development. And the example here we have in our Crater Planning District, it's the Virginia Gateway Region Site Development Program, 15 sites. And if you look at VDP, when they identified sites around the state, about 25% of their top sites were in our region. And clearly because of I-64 and I-95, it makes a lot of sense. But these sites would be tiered up from tier 2 to tier 4. Tier 5 is shovel-ready sites. And importantly, we need to have more sites around the Commonwealth that are tier 4, tier 5. And again, manufacturing, logistics, and data centers are excellent uses of these sites. The next one is the Virginia BioConnect, and we have 5. It's a competitive grant being led here in the Richmond area. We have 5 participating regions, and this is a great way to really build the bio and life science category throughout the state, sharing a lot of best practices. And enhancing and really building internships. It's absolutely vitally important, but collaboration is one of the best ingredients of all this, and good mentorships, and it's working out great. Lastly, as Nancy mentioned, we are always looking for good projects for both Region 5 and Region 4. Last night, we had a presentation that was made from our regional entrepreneurial initiative, and there were probably 100 folks here listening to the collaborations that are occurring in our region and looking at opportunities of how do we build this entrepreneurial class, because that's how you grow the economy, with entrepreneurs working together. And the one point that was made throughout the whole evening was collaboration. Older entrepreneurs have a lot more experience, and if they collaborate and help mentor others, we're going to create a lot of new businesses. Obviously, Jefferson Labs, our global internet hub, and life sciences. So if there's any concept that you all get out of this, Nancy and I and our teams are looking for good projects for Go Virginia. We both have money to spend, and when we look at the budget from the government or from the state, we need to spend our Go Virginia dollars and do it in a very productive way where we get a great return on investment. So bring us projects, bring us ideas. Thank you, John, and thank you all.
Hey, and thank you, Nancy and Wilson. I mean, and just to kind of, maybe it's a blinding glimpse of the obvious, but you two guys are 2 of the 14 executive committee members. So we are tied right into Go Virginia at every monthly meeting and talking about this. And you've funded RVA757 Connects because part of Go Virginia has some money set aside for regions to work together. And there are not many regions that are quite as tied together like ours are. So it's just been a great relationship. So I love it when someone comes to a meeting and says, I have money, give me an idea.
John, let me just add one thing. I see a lot of the great work that Nancy does and that Wilson does in their particular regions, and much of their friendly competition. And not unlike this Saturday's William Mary Richmond game, it's great to watch that. But I also, they both are excellent at recognizing 1 + 1 = 3 opportunities where the two regions can work together and do something like the global internet hub where neither region could do it alone. And they're quick to pick that up and quick to lead that and to help lead that. And let me just say about two regions, the secret sauce that nobody ever really recognizes, that when you look at both of our numbers, they do not include the military and the defense contribution to our various numbers, workforce, dollar revenues, etc. But when you look at the tremendous logistics centers around Richmond for the military, and you look at all the Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard centers in Hampton Roads, they make such a huge contribution to the economies of both regions that we don't get credit for in all the public statistics. But if we did, we would both rank considerably higher than we rank on a national competitiveness basis. But even regardless of that, by putting the two regions together and looking for 1 + 1 = 3 opportunities with the great diverse economies we have, and the shared collaboration opportunities for growth and development, we're gonna get there with or without those numbers as time goes by.
Yep. Great. Any other questions or observations from the directors or members here? Okay, well, more to come on this front. In fact, JLARC's doing a report on these on Go Virginia, and I think if we have an opportunity to weigh in, I think we should. We have been a real beneficiary of a lot of strategy and funding coming from this group. So thank you guys so much. All right. So brings us to our last topic, which is taking the innovation corridor to the next level. And what we want to do here, the executive committee is putting together an annual plan like we do every year, but we really want to take stock in thinking about where are we headed long term, what's over the horizon for us, and how do we do that in a disciplined way. And so we really want to open it up for discussion here and build on the comments that you gave us the survey and try to help inform the executive committee as we talk about, where's our North Star, and they'll come back to you with our operational plan for next year, but also more specificity on how we need to think about our evolution going forward. So I'm just going to set this up by saying, we didn't make up this idea of mega regions and innovation corridors, and they're around the country. And like in North Carolina, the Research Triangle is expanding. It's going east and west. And so the insight for me is, oh my gosh, we got to go faster. And now hyper focused on Texas because they're a country in and of themselves. And now San Antonio and Austin are getting together. So we just got to figure out the best practices and be more nimble and agile and more creative and execute. And really to leverage this idea of neighboring regions working together. So just a few thoughts before we open it up to brainstorming. Everything goes back to your why, and our why is about the economic success and quality of life of our two regions. And so our mission is that we identify and support and advance opportunities, initiatives, and projects that are going to help us live that life, that purpose, and it's going to benefit our communities for generations to come. We heard that language from the governor about I-64. He goes, this is going to help for generations to come, having widened this road. So that's really what we're about. And, it's going to be amazing to be in this organization, 25 years from now and to see where it goes. But its responsibility of that longer term success starts here in terms of what are we going to point towards. So here's our list of current priorities. And I wish we could all collectively take a marker and just put it through that first one together, but let the line suffice. Now we're going to keep going on the internet, on the innovation corridor, the global internet hub, and the Virginia Capital Trail and passenger rail, and also support directors' initiatives as we have been. But what we heard in the survey is really that support the clusters that are growing, and these are the ones that overlap between the two regions. And how do we do even a better job promoting these and in doing what Tom always says, convening and collaborating and really trying to move these along faster in the way that we can do it that complements the economic development regional agencies and the two workforce councils of each region. We really want to make sure we stay in our lane and we do the best we can to, have that 1 + 1 = 3. So as we open this up to brainstorming, this is a great book if you haven't read it. It's a bestseller by a guy, Adam Grant's written a bunch of books, and it's the whole premise is you got to really think about your core fundamental assumptions on how you run your business or your organization and challenge the very foundational assumptions to think like a scientist and come up with hypotheses and what is really driving us, and has those fundamental things changed? And so this is what I want us to do for the remainder of this meeting. Let's think about what did we learn from our survey? What did we learn from some recent wins? What is our geographic footprint? Really, what's the optimal footprint for us long term? And then are we aligned to transcendent trends? And should we have a BHAG? And I think most of you guys know that means big, hairy, audacious goal from Jim Collins's work. But from the survey, just that one question about give us some ideas, we went and put them into categories. So I'm just going to give you the headlines, but you gave us a lot of verbatim comments, but they fell into let's leverage our entertainment and creative forces along this corridor that we do have world-class entertainment. How can we package that and really use that to attract talent? Build an arena, not only in Hampton Roads, but Richmond or somewhere in between. Build a tech park, internships and apprenticeships infrastructure where we have a lot of great work because of the two workforce councils in this and some of the companies in both markets. How do we build on this and be world-class? Healthcare, just unbelievable, the age wave and what that's going to mean with comorbidities and in their whole entitlement funding. It's just, it's going to be more and more challenging. And how do we deal with this? The airports question came up a number of times. We're watching the two regions think about this, but in particular, letting Hampton Roads sort through their conversations about the Newport News Airport and in Norfolk. And then early childhood education. Everybody here knows just how important it is to start at the beginning. So that came up a number of times. Affordable housing, high-speed rail is something that Cascadia is doing, and I really want to figure out how to get them to come to one of our board meetings and share what they're doing there. And then the Global Internet Hub and the Jefferson Lab linkage, especially with kind of where we are on both of those. So that takes me to recent wins, and that, I'll tell you, in the survey comments, y'all kept pointing to this, that there's got to be some alchemy here. This is really kind of interesting alignment and timing. So what does this mean for us? And I tell you, the one thing it does mean is that we can have some intentionality. These scores are pathetic. When you look at mature digital infrastructure cities like Denver and Seattle and Atlanta, they have been growing their tech jobs at a 7.6% average. And these are really high paying jobs. And their 10-year productivity growth is great. And their GDP growth over 10 years is exceptional. And compare that to our direct competitors like Charlotte and Raleigh and Orlando. And they're doing well. And the US total is doing fairly well in terms of those categories, that growth in tech jobs and really high paying wages, but worker productivity, because tech gets you to be more efficient. And then that GDP growth. And then look at our scores. We got to change this, because everybody is a tech company. We all depend on technology. We got to have these workers here. So our footprint's another topic. And it's status quo, or go to the east and west and put a lasso around Charlottesville and the Eastern Shore, or maybe even go north and south and think about the other mega regions. So we're going to hear about Rocket Lab, and there are many reasons to adopt the Eastern Shore. This is probably one that's really taken off right now. And then Charlottesville, you saw where biotech is important to both regions, and they add a lot of workers in this space because of what the university's done there. And then the Greater Washington Partnership. And they're really focused on a number of topics that are aligned with ours. And we need to invite these guys to talk to us and just see, are they part of the future? And then the transcendent trends, and I could do an entire hour on this or more, but we're growing in population. In Virginia, 80% of that's going to be in that Golden Crescent. And the 60 plus population is going to really grow like crazy. And all the way to 2060, it's going to keep increasing. And you can't go past that because the US Census doesn't go past that. But that's going to have this age wave impact on our workforce. We're shifting from a population pyramid to a population rectangle, and we're not having all the bursts we need. So we're going to have more and more of a shortage of workers. And so we got to figure that out. And then thinking about the diversity that's going to happen, and throw in climate change and sea level rise. And these are just mega issues that we got to make sure we're aligned to. So, should we have a BHAG? And think about the Northwest. They've got this BHAG on putting in a high-speed 200-mile-an-hour train to connect these cities. That's bold. Is it achievable? So you got to have a BHAG that's just not frustrating. But this is what the governor says out there, which is just aspirational, because he sees the transportation system, high-speed rail, uniting in a way that takes care of a lot of other issues. So I just love that big perspective. And another big perspective from the healthcare community, and sadly, the youngest generations are sicker than the oldest ones when they were that age, when they were young. And so where are we headed? This is a scary, scary thing. And there's a movement around the planet called Blue Zones. 75 communities have now practiced in an intentional way of keeping their population healthy and living longer and adding years to life, if they use the lessons learned from some of the localities around the world that have been discovered that have a lot of people living longer. So I'm not advocating we do this, but it's a BHAG to do something like this. One of the best verbatims in the whole survey to me, and I want to just share this headline with you. Some smart person said, just the notion of a mega region in itself is our big idea. RVA757 Connects has already, in a short time of existence, accomplished more than I thought possible. But maybe just who we are and what we're doing is our BHAG. I don't know. But I want to stop there and just hopefully try to remember some of these things as we open it up for a discussion period now, and then we'll come back and wrap it up with Tom. So I want to stop sharing and open it up to you smart folks to weigh in on some of these issues. Peggy.
What a surprise. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but when you talk about innovations and training and workforce talent development, part of the problem is, or part of the issues, I won't say it's a problem, part of the issue is when you compare Virginia to the states that you talked about, Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, the big difference there is that they make investments. They don't just throw money into a dark hole and wonder where it goes. They make investments in talent development, and a lot of times they do it through their community colleges. And until the state of Virginia decides that investing in what we do, and we educate 46% of the Commonwealth, we're addressing, and thank you, Nancy, for mentioning our chancellor has aligned our colleges with Go Virginia to be strategic and specific to what businesses need. And our issue is we don't have the capacity. We can't train any more people. And that's the shame of it all, is that 86% of the people that we train, and they're not young people, many of our students are the older community, but 86% of the people that graduate or take certifications and credentials from community colleges stay in Virginia. The 4 years cannot say that. So we are a training source for talent development for the Commonwealth, compacted into regions. We serve the entire Commonwealth, and until the state makes an investment in what we can do, we will always lag behind. We will always lag behind. So,
but Peggy, some people, I'm gonna pile on to what Peggy. I've been waiting since you first brought this up. There's a big misunderstanding of the why behind Peggy's appeal, my appeal. 70%, 60 to 70% of the jobs that have been created in the last 5 years will be created in the next 5 years only require an associate's, a credential, or a certificate. And many of those employers only want to see that. They don't want to see other things because they want to know that they've got the skills that were learned in order to obtain that associate's or that credential or certificate, because that allows that person to come in the organization and make a contribution very quickly. So if you just do the math, if 70% of the job require those things, and we do not have, other than the community college system, we don't have another way of meeting that need. And so in the number I think Peggy quoted is not necessarily a number that is what we need going forward. Some of that is to correct the sins of the past. The community college system has been underfunded for decades. So I would argue that part of the reason we are where we are in this workforce crisis is because we didn't do the right thing decades ago. So, I mean, I think there's a way for us to both advocate and educate around this so that the community at large, General Assembly, et cetera, really understand what we failed to do and then what we need to do.
And I'm just going to add on to that too, because I agree with Peggy too. This is really vital. I think that the community college system does get their funding. I think the chancellor is making great efforts to do this. We trail, we're in the bottom half of the United States in funding community college. So I echo that. I also wanted to follow up on the discussion with legislators. I think this is a really key opportunity. There's such a turnaround of new members of the General Assembly that especially in the mega region, that we need to start developing these relationships now, not when we just need them, and get them involved as ambassadors and know about what the work we're doing. I think it's a real crucial time to do it now, especially during the legislative session. If we all have our elevator speech, or just make sure they're aware of the work that and initiatives that RVA757 does. A new ideal that I think, like we're looking to be a global internet hub. it's maybe expanding that to as an international hub for trade, a free trade zone, that building these routes, because I think, you know, when you open, most of the growth that's going to happen in the world, I think 95% is going to be not in the United States. It's going to be outside the United States. Getting this international investments, trade opportunities, especially with the Port of Norfolk, and our location on the East Coast, that there might be some great possibilities that we should explore on that area.
If I could just touch on what Peggy and Mitch said about the community colleges, I think the other part of that conversation is that for the longest time, they have been organized and driven to pursue, you know, academic degrees, and a lot of how they're funded, the, you know, Englishes and the histories are sort of guaranteed funding because they're funded by the state. But so many of the degrees that we need and that I think the businesses need are really more non-degree seeking programs, the credentials. And so part of that conversation needs to be changing how those credential programs are funded, because they don't have the same sort of guaranteed funding from the state that the degree seeking programs have.
You know, Ross, let me piggyback. We talked about this at our recent council meeting, and it was brought up that whether it was 30 or 40 years ago, that the commitment was the business community was going to support their community colleges from a funding standpoint to help with those credentials. And so I think it's really, you know, how do we change that around? So it should come from our legislature, because in our region, we have committed Go Virginia dollars to 2 programs for lab techs and advanced manufacturing technicians. And the question always was raised, why is Go Virginia supporting it when the legislature should? And let me just add one other thing, Peggy, you should be aware of this, as we're in the process of getting approved for our Talent Pathway Initiative, and it's being run at Brightpoint with Bill Figge. And he's done a marvelous job. We think very, very highly of him. He's a great leader. And our 2 directions, one is literally IT, tech talent, and the other one is pharmaceutical talent. So it's really coming up with strategies of how we build that pipeline for the next 10 years.
Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all those very positive sentiments about community college. And just let me say that when our chancellor went to the OP6 with our 6-year plan, one of the big questions that came out of that was, and what is the business community giving to community colleges? So the state, there's obviously an expectation that the business community make its contribution. We're in a position to show them that that contribution is being done. It's being done across the Commonwealth. And in many respects, it is the only way that we have been able to meet their needs, in that, because we don't get it, we're not funded for it through the state. So the business community has been very supportive, but we can only do so much with what we have. So thank you all for your support.
Let me just chime in one thing. I agree 100%, 1,000% with everything. And we've got to get more funding from the state for the community college. And Peggy's 100% right. It's one business deal at a time, one business leader at a time. For example, in the last year, I've personally seen 2 cases. I've seen a drone company I've affiliated with build their National Drone Academy at Richard Bland College. And that's all about training, workforce training, and that's all about internships and continuing on. And more recently, I've seen an international manufacturer on the cusp of partnering with TCC and Marcia Constant to build out a workforce training center there at TCC. So what we have to remind ourselves is it's one business at a time, one business leader at a time, one community college leader at a time, and get some actual deals done.
But we also, there's one thing we have to overcome, because I've raised money over the last 10 years for Reynolds Community College. If I was raising money for scholarships, I had no problem. If I was raising money for programming or bricks and mortar, too many times somebody looked me dead in the eye and said, I already pay taxes.
Okay.
And that is a valid and legitimate response. Now, there's also a perspective that there should be a partnership, but where does the partnership apply? Does it apply to programming support? Does it apply to programming support and bricks and mortar? As a business, I'm not sure, at least my opinion, I'm going to help work on programming and support that financially, but I'm not sure I should step up for bricks and mortar. I mean, we do pay taxes.
Well, Mitch, I do think that there are some businesses that are willing to partner on the brick and mortar, in particular when it comes to, specialized training. I know that, like the shipyard has talked about, sort of a specialized technical training center that would include, more, space for ship fitting training and welders and blasting and coating training, stuff that like takes some space, and that clearly there's a demand for, not just with them, but in the entire, ship repair industrial base that Hampton Roads has. But I do think part of the challenges there is this perception, and I think that's where sort of Michael's comments about this new legislature, I think there's been a historic legislative perception that the community colleges are perhaps not staying in their lane, and it's sometimes trying to some extent competing with some of what the 4 years are doing, whether it's expanding into, expanding their nursing programs, expanding their academic programs, when what the business community needs is not more associate's degrees in English and history. And I don't mean to be picking on English and history, but we need more certificates and, workforce training programs.
Well, and just, from a workforce development, everything we do contributes to workforce development, whether it is a transfer program, whether it is dual enrollment, everything we do lends to talent development, certifications and credentials, all talent development. And the fact that we have tried very hard and are working, and our chancellor's vision is to begin to blur the lines between K-12, between community college, and between businesses, because that's the only way we're going to address the talent needs of the Commonwealth. And we are in the economic development business through talent development. And, so it's an investment. And as far as brick and mortars, some of it is brick and mortar capacity. We can only fit so many people in labs and so many people in nursing simulation. And so it is a capacity building. We've asked the state for that.
And another way of looking at this is if in fact we may be over promising in terms of telling from an economic development standpoint that we have workers here, because I think to some degree we may be stretching it. So if the crisis is in front of us, and perhaps we have overpromised a bit, the solution is also in front of us. Right. And because the community college system can be scaled up from where it is today, to Peggy's point. It's going to take a partnership. It's going to take a lot of money, but it can be done. And I just hate to see us continue to fragment our dollars and our energies with so many, with 24 approaches to workforce development when the best one we have is staring right at us.
Yeah, this is Ronnie Thomas. I've been to many of these meetings, and I'm not the most familiar with a lot of the programs that you run, but I think it would help from a business perspective for us to talk maybe a little less in abstract onto what is it that businesses need to put in. If we could be a little more finite onto what are these avenues, and what are we talking as far as funding, and what kind of specialties are there, it would be easier to kind of understand what we're talking. When we talk in high abstract, you lose the business community because they're thinking this is some big investment. It's complicated. We're not sure we get what we want. We work with the community colleges here. We've had some terrific results, but we would, we would look at investing because this is not a short-term problem. Yeah, and it's not about training or the 4-year or the 2-year. You just don't have enough people. So the key is maybe to put it into a little more finite onto what is it that we are looking for. And as Tom said, one company at a time. We are short of nursing, right? We're short of technical people. We're short of 2-year associate, engineering kind of talent. So if we can understand what is it in finite, if I invest this for the next 4 years, I'm going to get this back and I get the best kids from there. I think that will help with the messaging.
I think Peggy has an answer.
Well, we have, and I can send it to you, but we have already put together that very same thing that you're talking about.
Okay.
We have gone region by region, Go Virginia region, and developed, here's what each region is telling us they need. And for example, in region 5, we need healthcare, skilled trade, and energy. And that region 5 is here in Hampton Roads.
But again, that is what they want. What is it that they need to do is what should be the next column. And I'm sure that's there, Peggy.
Well, what they need to do is asking, here's what the regional investment is, the additional credentials that from the employers, and the average wage. So we have not only what it needs, the cost that we need, but what's the investment. And so we've done that by Go Virginia region. So we're really trying hard to do our homework and to put, as from Mikkel's comment, put in front of the new legislators what it is, what this means, what the investment is, what does it buy you, but the specifics are done regionally. The colleges are working in the Go Virginia regions, and the colleges themselves know, here's what we need to do. Marcia Constant knows probably what you need, if I had to guess, specifically. I need to get off my soapbox, don't I? I'll be quiet.
Can I bring up another hot potato topic and just perhaps get folks' reaction? Has anyone or are anyone hearing from other businesses about any childcare concerns and this sort of impending childcare cliff?
You mean access or being able to pay for it?
Access, funding, so the state has essentially propped up a number of programs thanks to ARPA dollars that really sort of expire, next year.
Like we're not hearing it too much.
Okay.
Ross, I think this forum's good. I'd ask more, Jim, if you don't have the answer today, please let some of us know. If you were asked by the state tomorrow to fund 1/3 of all capacity, what's your reaction? Because I said yesterday at a VBRE meeting that I'm not sure the business community is ready to take on another employee benefit, given the historic rise in wages and all other issues going on. But that may be coming. So you need to let some of us know that are going to be in these conversations about your child care thoughts.
Yeah, and this is Brian Davis. Just, childcare certainly comes up in workforce development. And there are plenty of resources out there that can pay for it. It's a capacity issue of the schools not being able to take on, in some cases, more students because of their staffing, because of their pay structure. If I can go to Target and make $20 an hour, and not be involved in that type of work, then so I'm not saying it's a public or private or one or the other, but I think it is something, in terms of General Assembly that I think will continue to come up.
Well, this has been a great discussion on on workforce. I will share some slides that we have on what we think 10 years from now is going to happen. It's not a good picture. I mean, demographically, we're headed in the wrong direction. So we're going to have a more of an acute crisis. And people say AI is going to change all that and be disruptive. I think it's going to be like the internet was. It's just going to move people up the food chain, be more productive. And I think that demographically, we're going to have a huge shortage of workers. So this is a real important topic for us to think about. Just in the remaining time, though, I'd like to just shift the discussion to our footprint. You know, we've done a really good job getting our two communities to work closer together and seeing some success. There's this the constant, you know, consideration of, do we really think about broadening and at what time broadening to the Eastern Shore and Charlottesville? And do we entertain, start to get to know some of the people that are running the other nearby mega region efforts and invite them in to, you know, present to us or come to our board meetings, just to understand what is Research Triangle, what are they really trying to do, and what is the Greater Richmond Partnership? Brian, you spend time on that board. You know, so it's just a big question for us. What do you think about our footprint? So I'll just open it up, see what you guys say.
Well, if I can say an easy thing on the Eastern Shore, I mean, as I mentioned in my presentation, Go Virginia Region 5 absolutely includes the Eastern Shore. And we have a number of members on our Region 5 Council representing that, both on the community college and business side. So just something to think about. It's already in there.
Okay.
And Rocket Lab's there, by the way.
John, I'll just add for context for everybody, the Greater Washington Partnership is really interesting because it really only includes 3 cities. I mean, they talk about it as a mega region, but the only people ever at the conversation is Baltimore, DC, and us. I was actually meeting last week with the 3 mayors about downtown revitalization. I'll just commend this group that you've gone farther and gotten more done, not being disrespectful to the other. They've delivered some good research thanks to consultants they're able to hire, but as far as getting some things actually accomplished, the RVA757 team has done a phenomenal job. I think GWP is trying to find its way. They had one mission 2 years ago, and now they've reorganized and are trying to figure it out again. So it's not easy to compare apples to apples between the two.
Okay.
I think we should think about going in toward the Charlottesville area for a couple of reasons. One, because I think a lot of their clusters, especially their healthcare, is really complements what we're doing. But also, if I'm not mistaken, they're looking at data centers in Louisa and up that 64 corridor. And I think it logistically makes good sense to consider Charlottesville.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, the half step, Louisa's halfway, and they just had a huge announced data center, huge campus that's going to get built.
And aren't they, in there a data center being looked at in Stafford as well?
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense. I think the question is timing too. I feel like we're past the point of sort of storming and forming, you know, that I feel like we really got some traction and there's a lot of trust and we've got a really good agenda. When you bring in new people, it gets a little more complicated, you know. That's the one side, the other flip side of timing. But I think about the port and Barbara, I mean, you're dependent on 64 in the whole state. I mean, you're thinking in a bigger mega region scale.
You're absolutely right, John. Every corner of Virginia is our market and points beyond.
Yep. Well, I would really like to get, maybe we're gonna have to pay for a plane ticket, but the former governor of Lake Washington is in charge of the Cascadia mega region. I'd like to get her here, you know, invite her to come to one of our board meetings and maybe get some of the folks from Research Triangle. They came a couple of years ago, but really understand what they're doing. Just, we gotta look up a little bit more outside our region. And also the guys in Texas, one of the mayors, I think it was Austin's mayor, wrote the book about their mega region in the making. So just, I got to believe that we can learn something from having them come talk to us. And maybe that's Brian and Brian, something we can think about for convergence.
And one thing too, when you're talking about we're talking about high-speed rail and you're seeing what they're doing in Washington state, maybe we need to look at that too. And before we invest all this money on high speed, maybe it's super speed rail that we need to be looking at.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, John, I'd like to suggest that we get Stuart Henderson and his team together with the data science people from UVA. That could be a very productive conversation, and it might direct us in terms of do we and when do we want to extend out to Charlottesville.
Okay, that's a great idea. That is.
Jim, I don't think we need to do that. I think that's already happening.
Yeah.
You know, remember Sura is, you know, the state university. So they've got the UVA data science folks. I mean, they were very supportive of the EIC state funding request in large part for that reason.
Right.
Okay, well, we got 2 minutes left, and I'm going to ask Tom to close us out. And I just want to thank everybody for giving us all your time and, you know, your intellectual support, your financial support, and really making 2023 a great year for us. So we've got a great foundation to move forward on. So just on behalf of your staff, thank you so much. So Tom?
John, thank you for your leadership. Everyone on this call, thank you for participating. We are really working hard to turn more and more into a board of discussions and ideas, an innovative board versus a reporting board. And I think we're definitely moving in that direction. We heard from a lot of people today. Remember that economies are built from regions out, not from countries down. And the four most important things are three of the things that are part of our focus: connectivity, collaboration, innovation. When you do all those things well, you increase productivity and improve competitiveness. So we do these things. We do those three where we can, where it makes sense to do them between these two regions, where 1 + 1 can equal 3. And in doing that, we convened the appropriate parties at the appropriate times to move it forward, with the hope ultimately of increasing productivity and growing. So thank you for all you do. I want to point out our meetings next year. These are already on my book, and please get them on your books. Please give them to your assistant to put them there. The convergence event, as John pointed out, has been improving every year. Thanks to the chambers for all they've done to bring it to where it is and where it's headed. Next year, we're actually thinking about eliminating the dinner and the after dinner speaker part to keep everyone here for the whole program and to get as much interactivity as we can get. So please continue to send John and Greg and Ted and I your ideas, your thoughts, your 1 + 1 = 3 opportunities. Remember, we are not competing with anything going on in each region. What we're doing is we're looking at the similar things, the similar goals in each region, and where we think the two regions can be stronger together and get more done, then we basically asked to the appropriate members of the MIC if we can help in that regard, and then we lend our support. We are not competing with anybody on this video. We are here to work with you, and our math is very simple. It's 1 + 1 = 3. So on that note, I'll thank John, and I'll thank everybody who's participated and been on this video. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you in our board meeting next year.
That's great. Great wrap up, Tom. Thanks.
You bet. Take care.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.